Greetings everybody. This is going to be a short video supplement to an article that I'm writing up for flightsim.com on creating ATC taxi routes for X-Plane 10. The airport that I'm working on here is Olympia Regional in Washington State. I chose this one to work with for this video for two reasons. One, so a friend of mine is doing a scenery project with it, and I'm trying to help him out a little bit. And number two, it may be small, but it contains all of these segments that you would find in any particular ATC route network. Okay, so what I've done here is over on the right, I've created a group where I want to keep all my ATC routing data together. We are selected in the ATC routing mode, and up in the default options area here, we want to go ahead and set up what we're going to be working with. We're leaving the one-way directional identifier off, and we're going to set the runway to runway 1735, and that's the one we're going to be working with first. And we have to set the departure to both directions of the runway, so 17 and 35 for departure, and the same for arrival, 1735. Now if you'll notice that it took 4 clicks to set those options there, and that's one of the reasons why I have the workflow set up the way I do, is I like to work on the areas that require the active zone settings, because that takes a lot more effort to change these than it does just to change a name out here. Okay, so we leave the ILS because we're not doing that yet, leave it blank. And the name, I'm going to put it in the runway name 17/35. Okay, the slop area is a setting that tells World Editor how close 2 points need to be together before it will auto merge them, kind of like a snap to vertices function. Alright, so now that we've got that set, let's go ahead and we're going to create our runway segment, and this is what they call the active zone. Anything that is active zone related requires tower clearance to either enter or exit that area. Okay, so when we create this, it's going to be color coded red, which lets you track and whatever the particular segments are. Alright, so we're going to set this, and we don't want to go all the way to the end of the runway. We want to start out here about at the takeoff roll point. So we're going to click once at this end of the runway, and then down at this other one, again short of the runway at the end itself. Click there and press enter, and it has created our runway segment. Okay, and it's color coded red for active zones, like I said. Alright, so now one thing I got to do is move all of these into my ATC route area, and now I can start keeping those together. Okay, so now we're going to create the access areas from the runway hold lines into the runway area. So I turn off the runway option. We're going to leave all of the active zone settings here the same, because the system needs to know that we're dealing with areas that still involve the active zone for that particular runway. And then we're going to change the name. I don't have the chart for this airport up at this time here, but now I'm going to go ahead and set and work on this crossing way right here. And it works the same way with any other point. Alright, so I'm just going to say that this is taxiway alpha. Okay, and if I zoom in a little bit here, right, what I want to do is I want to create a segment that goes all the way across this, and this is kind of handy here that it goes straight from side to side. So I'm going to create one just inside the runway hold line over here, and over here on the other side, just inside the runway hold line there. Okay, and press enter, and it now gives me the taxiway line for alpha. You can see it over here. And what it also did in the meantime here is it created a split between these two segments of the runway segment. Okay. Now, what we normally do, or what I would do in my workflow, is I would continue just like this. I would drop down here and do this crossing here at the same time, because I don't have to change these options. Do this one, and then this one, and then this one. And oh, by the way, I forgot to do this one way up here at the top. Again, we do the same thing there. Once I've done all of those, then it's time to go ahead and take off all of these active zone settings. And the next thing I like to do is go ahead and do any ILS zones. Okay. Alright, so this particular taxiway here has an ILS protected zone. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set that one, and this is for runway 17 because ILS is only active on that runway. So I select ILS 17 and it's still on taxiway A, and I'm going to run it, zoom in a little bit more here. I'm going to run it from the end of this segment back to the inside of the ILS hold zone. There. Press enter. Okay. And now you'll notice that it's color coded a yellow for an ILS zone. Okay. Alright, and that's all there is to do that one. Now, once I've done all the ILS, even though there's one up here we could do, but I'm going to go ahead and we've already done it, so we don't need to do it again. So now I'm going to turn off the ILS, to select it again. And now we're going to create the taxiway that is nothing but an uncontrolled area, and we're going to leave that one set for taxiway A, and we're going to run that one all the way from the beginning of the ILS zone out to this junction out here. Okay, and I press enter and it creates it. Now it looks like it's orange there right now, but in fact if I click on something else it comes up in green. Now sometimes these can be hard to distinguish if you've got all these lines from the paint lines and runway lines or pavement lines to try and keep track of, but you can always, in vertex mode, you can always click on that segment to bring it back up. Okay, now somebody may ask me why I put it out here instead of coming out and then curving around the deal. Number one, you don't want to have an excess number of nodes in an airport because that's basically just kills your performance frame wise. And number two, ATC doesn't really need to know that, okay, we get here and then a turn and then a turn and turn and turn for make that turn. Basically, it just needs to know how to connect these individual segments. Okay. All right. And one thing you need to be careful with when you're doing taxiways where you think it's an uncontrolled segment, like in this airport here, is you may be tempted to run this taxiway all the way up from the top down here, all the way down to here, and then down around to the runway hold line down there. The only problem with that is that you run into this here where you have a runway crossing it. So you just need to be careful when you're doing these long segments that you don't overrun in another active or protected zone in the process. Okay, so you got to watch your pavement markings. Okay, so the last area taxiway type we're going to talk about is basically an unnamed. So we're going to go back into ATC mode. All right, and for this one here, we don't really have to give it a name because we're going to make the taxiway here into the terminal area, and there are no taxiways typically or named taxiways in this area. So we're just going to leave that blank, and then we're going to create a segment from back here over to here and then into the taxiway area by where this plane is, and then we're going to bring it right back out to there. So basically we just created a loop and press enter, and then that brings us up our no name. What this does is now ATC can control planes that start up at this location here, and it will tell them to go ahead and taxi. It won't give you a name or anything like that, but if you're taxiing to the runway up here, it may push you up this one here, and it'll get you out there, and then your first name segment, it will give you at this point here, either heading north this direction or east that direction. And the same thing if you're going south, it'll push you out this way onto the taxi network there. Okay, I hope this cleared up the questions, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye.